Hey everyone, we are back for another exciting episode this week, and as odd as it may sound, we are talking WGI in June. Plus, we get to meet Carol Abohatab, a recent inductee into the WGI Hall of Fame, and we will also find out what made Nicole say,
If you can do it, do it. You know, that's my whole thing about it. If you can do it, do it.
and why Thom said,
We're talking full-on productions coming out Thursday night. Woo!
all this and more on this week's episode of On a Water Break.
Let's go. Set it up.
Top of the show.
Form, check form. Cover down.
Do it again.
Run it back.
And we'll see you at the show.
Welcome to another episode of On a Water Break, the podcast where we talk about everything you and your friends are talking about at rehearsal on a water break. I'm Steve McCarrick, and again, because Jackie is still out teaching another camp, but I hope she's getting tons of water breaks. It's been a pretty hot week out here. But this week we decided to do a deep dive into the WGI Rules and Advisory Board meeting that happened in Vegas recently. We got to speak with a representative for percussion, guard, and winds on all the changes coming next season. Before we get to those, let's see who's hanging on the sidelines this week. We got Thom and Nicole. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Good to have you guys here.
Good to be here.
How things going in California, Thom?
Well, it's sunny.
The last couple days on the East Coast have been scary almost. I lost power last night.
Was
Yeah.
it storming?
It was just storming. It sounded like bombs exploding outside. Jeremy is nodding his head in silence because he lives near me and he agrees.
Yeah, my folks live in New Hampshire, and they've been, the humidity, the rain. No bueno.
Yeah, it's been no bueno. I completely agree. Nicole, how have you been?
I've been good, and the weather here in Ohio has actually been pretty nice. Last weekend we had Pride, and yeah, it was on Saturday. It was beautiful. It was hot though, like super hot, and then Sunday it was just hot again. But yeah, it's been really nice here, and I've been pretty good. I've just been very much working.
Yeah,
So, I'm glad to be back in.
That.
Yeah, just I'm glad to be back and doing another episode.
Yeah, and we love having you here. So we're going to get right into it with our gush and goes for the week since we have a lot of WGI content to get into. Really, we have a lot. But this is the time in our show where our hosts and guests get to gush and go on about anything they want having to do with the marching arts. Nicole, you want to get us started?
Absolutely. That's why it's like, ooh, pick me. So like I said before, I haven't really been doing much of anything with like marching arts or anything like that. Next week, I'm going to my first show of the season.
Oh,
yeah, I think.
which one?
It's Centerville. The Centerville show.
Man, I love Centerville.
Oh, dude, we go. My roommate and I go every year, and it's just so much fun. And we go up and we, watch, and like he likes to critique, and I laugh at him. So it's such a good time, and I love it because like I'm just on the other side of it, and so I can just marvel at everything that's going on. So I'm super excited to go to see some drum corps next week.
Oh yeah, I'm excited too. I feel like we're all about to gush and go about DCI. Thom, so what are you gushing and going on about this week?
Right? Look, we're all sad that Vanguard is not with us this year, but man, what a distraction with the dogfight that's going to happen from 11th to 13th place.
Right.
I'm more excited. I think Nicole and I were chatting about it. We're more excited about that than we are really who wins this year.
It's going to be more exciting. Yeah. It's just like, ooh, I mean, you've got five drum corps that could definitely be in that area, and you just don't know.
It's going to be real fun, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine what's going to happen there because for all the time I've been watching, Blue Knights was such like a staple. So I can't imagine they're going to just roll over and not make finals. They're going to be coming out hot. But Troopers has so much hype.
All of those corps, man, are past One of them's a past world champion with Madison.
Right. Yeah, Madison
They
too.
know how to get it done, so it's going to be interesting.
That's going to be a really, really interesting journey all summer long. Same thing at the top end too. I think that all, at least for percussion, even show design, I've been loving BD, been loving Crown, all these shows. I think it's going to be a great summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've gushed about DCI enough. Let's switch back to winter. We'll get right to these interviews about the rules. Up first, we have Jackie, Justin, and myself. We got to talk to Matt Carraher and Susie Harloff about winds and percussion. And then Cynthia got to talk to Chris McCarthy, who's one of the directors of the Origins Color Guard, all about WGI rules. We'll be back with you after a commercial break.
Hey, this is Christine Ream.
And Chris Green.
Guard Closet was founded as a consignment business in 2000. Since then, it has grown to include winter guard, band, percussion, and other genres.
We can help you with custom flag and costuming designs.
Our consignment inventory has plenty of great looks for your color guard, drumline, and marching band.
Pay it forward. When you purchase consignment, you help other programs. Last year, we sold over 400 sets of consignments and returned over $125,000 in payments to our consigners for their sales.
Additionally, Guard Closet offers custom and pre-designed costumes, flags, floors, and formal wear, full or partial show writing, educational programming, and other services.
Max out your rehearsal time and set up a microsite for easy student ordering for shoes, gloves, and other equipment.
The Guard Closet team is here to help you get everything you want and need for your season. Check us out at guardcloset.com and follow us on social media.
All right, everyone. We are back here on a water break. I'm here with Jackie.
Hey.
And Justin.
Hello.
And we are here today with Susie Harloff and Matt Carraher, who just got to attend the WGI Advisory Board meeting where new rules were voted on and proposed and accepted for next year's WGI competitive season. Matt, Susie, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Cool. So we'll be jumping into things here. I guess we can we'll kick things off because I'm a percussion guy. Sorry, Susie.
That's okay.
with percussion. Matt, can you give us a rundown of the different rules that were adopted for next year's season?
Yeah, sure. So we ended up, there were 6 proposals that were on the docket, and 3 of them were withdrawn before we ever got to the advisory board. So the 3 that were voted on, the first one was pretty inconsequential. It was to create a committee to review the concert class sheets. And, one of the first things we were told when we sat down in the meetings was, we're already doing this. The steering committee was already planning on it. So that was passed. And actually the representatives that were there for concert class units were able to break out at one point during the meetings to go sit and kind of just chat amongst themselves and
Right.
talk about, this is what we want to see from the sheets and where we want things to go. So that was the first one. The second one was an amendment to everyone's favorite rule 4.2.1 regarding electronic triggered sounds.
Yes.
Oh.
This is the big one that I've kind of heard about a little bit.
Yeah. So the rule that was voted on and passed is now any vocal track, which includes singing. It used to be just narration could be a single trigger. Now singing can be a single trigger as well. So something can have rhythmic intent if it's created by the voice.
Okay.
That was the second one. Yeah.
Okay. What is something, how strictly do they define a vocal sample? Is there a, because it just seems to me like that opens the door to a lot of possibilities now that you can have rhythmic intent in your sampling electronically.
Well, and so that was brought up because the rule could potentially read that, if somebody wants to beatbox or something like that, that it's created by the voice.
Yeah,
so it
exactly. Yeah.
Right, but the way that it's written, it's only for spoken word or sung word. It has to be words. It can't be just like any vocal sound that you make.
So it has to be words. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good workaround. Maybe someday someone will figure out like a loophole way to do something, and then we'll have another discussion then. But I think that sounds like a pretty airtight seal for now, at least. What's the third rule that was proposed?
And the third one was to lower the minimum performance times. So now A class's minimum performance time is 3 minutes. Open class is 3.5 minutes, and world class is 4 minutes.
Okay, and what were the previous? Do you remember?
Previously, it was 4-minute minimum for all classes.
Okay, all right.
Matt,
that's super interesting. I mean, I definitely go ahead. Yeah,
I was gonna say, I haven't met you before. I need to know something about you. So, can we run a little history on Matt about how about maybe like 32 counts?
Oh, you're so correct. I blared right past it. Yeah, no, wait, please catch us up to speed, Matt. I think we've talked about this bit a million times on the show before. Would you be ready to give it a try?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, you'll get 8 and in from the Met.
Okay. All right, so my name is Matt Carraher. I am the percussion director at Hempfield High School, which is right outside of Lancaster in central Pennsylvania. I've been there for 4 years. Before that, I was a high school band director for 7.5 years at Central Dauphin High School in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Been teaching in the central Pennsylvania area for 16, 17 years now. Have my undergrad and my master's in music from Messiah College, and I'm also the president of KIDA, and as of 2 weeks ago, am now on the board of directors for WGI.
Wow. Congratulations.
Nice.
Congratulations. Well done.
Thanks.
It certainly seems like you're taking your role seriously because you gave us a fantastic rundown of the percussion rules changes. Something I thought was cool altogether. It seems like when it's not like a super salacious like rule that people are going to get up in arms about, they're really letting like the community it affects figure things out for themselves, like in the concert rule. Would you say that there's that sort of flexibility is common for the advisory board? They're really letting the people that the rule affects kind of determine the way the rule is going to pan out in the future?
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about the advisory board meetings is, we're told multiple times from the administrators that are there that this board of representatives is what decides the direction of the activity for the next year, and so it's very open for anybody that's there to bring up concerns, support, different things like that. And at least in percussion land, the really cool thing about this year was there were so few proposals that we had a lot of time to really kind of dig in deep on things.
Right. And it sounds to me like a lot of the digging deep was probably for that second rule change.
Yeah, that was a spirited debate for sure. And surprisingly, actually, the minimum performance times for tiering the classes, that was there was a lot of debate about that one too.
Okay. Well, I want to come back to these in a moment. But let's also catch up with the WGI wins proposed changes as well. Susie, could you give us a rundown of what was discussed for wins for next year?
Yeah, absolutely. So they had 8 proposals. 2 of them were withdrawn before voting happened. The people that proposed them just really wanted discussion to happen. They didn't really want any rule changes to happen. So that occurred. So 6 things did change, and some of them are not really worthy of talking about. 2 of them were like wording corrections. They adopted new sheets last year, and they just had to correct some wording on them. One of them was aligning the size of the competition area to match percussion. Because so many of the winds and percussion shows are hosted together. So they wanted to just make that consistent. And then there were a couple of rules passed about sound systems. And, winds is such a new division. Every year it is evolving. And we have learned that the importance of sound systems for indoor winds, because most groups don't use percussion. They rely solely on the sound systems to provide a, kind of a click track, I guess, and all the background sound effects. So because Independent World does not have an age cutoff, they don't have an age limit, kind of like Independent World and Color Guard, correct? There was an issue where the rule mentioned that only a performer could be pushing buttons and stuff on the sound system, but in Independent World, you have adults performing, and so there was like, is that a staff member? Is that a performer? And so they just kind of cleared up the language in that so that there were no unnecessary penalties. And then if a sound system has like a catastrophic failure in the middle of the show, allowing an instructor to go out during the show to deal with it, it would still be a 1-point penalty to try to discourage people from taking advantage of that rule. But that just kind of helps the success of the groups, knowing that if something goes wrong, it can be fixed. The big proposal that had the most discussion was changing the minimum number of performers. Now, every proposal that they talked about, really the goal for WINS is growing the activity. It's still so new. We want people to be involved. We want, they want the WINS division to grow. So every discussion was, is this rule proposal, if we accept it, is it going to help WINS grow long term? So this one was, it used to be you had to have a minimum of 10 performers on the floor. And the proposal was to reduce that to 5. There was just a lot of discussion about, well, 5 people or 5 wind performers, because WINS, some WINS group use color guards, some WINS group use percussion players, what does that mean? And so it ended up being 5 wind players minimum. And that's really just to kind of encourage these groups that are just starting, to be able to get in. And there was discussion about, like, do people want to watch 5 wind people on the floor? And it was just like, well, with the growth and development of sound systems and the backtrack and how that can support even small ensembles, yes, it could be really great. You can imagine Tarpon Springs. I'm not saying anything about Tarpon Springs. I don't know if they're ever doing winds, but if you watch them this Winter Guard season, you had like a small group of great wind players on that Winter Guard floor, and it was like, that could be a wind show. So that, that discussion was had, and it passed. So now you can have a minimum of 5. So that's kind of the update from the WINS world. And like I said, just a lot of the discussion this weekend was just how can we grow the activity, because a lot of people still don't know what it is. A lot of people have hangups about it, the money, the staffing, the rehearsal space, is it going to hurt my concert band, all of these discussions, and how can we get the word out there that it is just beneficial and worthwhile. So that's it from WINS world.
Well, I kind of want to know, dive into that a little bit of what was the conclusions that some of them have come to? Because, I work with a lot of small bands. Like, everybody I work with is pretty much small bands. They're rural a lot of the time. And their concern has been that just like, they don't see the value of marching year round. They think, okay, we need to sit down and focus on our concert and then, and then just do our marching in the summer and fall. And I'm like, I think there's value though in also having a marching program. What were some of the different sides of that that were discussed that might be helpful?
All of the people in the room, we all have WINS groups, so we are all like 100% for it. And obviously there's no research out there, but from the experience of all the directors in that room, they're saying my kids are by far better players because they are playing constantly. Like, not only are they playing in their WINS rehearsal, but then they go to their wind ensemble rehearsal and they're still playing, so their chops are stronger. And then the element that WGI WINS has of having to train the kids how to perform, like how to connect to the audience, how to create emotion, and how that translates into when you're sitting in concert band, it makes them better performers in the concert setting as well. So, I mean, those of us who have done it have nothing but positive things to say about it. I mean, like, is it hard work? Of course. Is it extra time? Yes. Is it extra effort? Yes. But the kids love it. The program, it has done nothing but benefit our program. So we're just hoping more people can take that leap of faith and get involved.
Right, Matt. I want to kind of tack onto the same idea that Susie's discussing here. Percussion is at a bit of a different stage in its development than WINS is. would you say that percussion has the same explicit goal of growing the activity when it changes rules? If not, what were some of the goals that the advisory board was discussing as they figure out what conclusions they want to reach?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always an emphasis on growing the activity, because even though percussion is bigger than the winds program at this time, there's still definitely room for growth, not only in WGI but in kind of the local circuits across the country as well. And so I think there's always an emphasis on growth.
Right.
A lot of the emphasis this week for percussion was um, more so based on um, let's take a hard look at the sheets, at the rubrics, and uh, uh, are we being adjudicated the way that we want to be adjudicated? So there was again, because we had so few proposals, there was enough time to sit through and go caption by caption and just have an open forum discussion on what do you like about the music sheet, what don't you like, what do you like about the viz sheet, what don't you like, and so on and so on. And so there's a really big emphasis on just making sure that the membership is happy with the way that the adjudication process works.
That's really interesting. Could you give us maybe an example of like things that they do want to reward versus things they don't want to reward, or it's at least the conversations that were being had around those sorts of ideas?
Well, yeah, a lot of the conversation kind of steered its way into we love the sheets. We don't always love the way the sheets are interpreted, and
Yeah.
so and that's it's a subjective activity. That's the way it's always going to be. So a lot of the conversation on that side was sort of geared towards how can we create better training for the judge community so that we can take this subjective activity and make it a little more objective and make it a little more clear as to what they're looking for in terms of how you design a program, what skills are being defined as basic skills, intermediate skills, advanced skills, and different things like that.
Speaking from the member experience, having just recently aged out, that was what we all want too. So it's cool to see that the alignment between the people all the way up making the decisions at the advisory board, it really is in alignment with what the boots on the ground, in air quotes, want from the activity as well. We all just wish that there was more of a concrete way to evaluate and just trust that you're going to get the same realistic result from show to show. Um, Maybe not as much in WGI because you have one big competition at the end of the year, but in DCI all the time, it would have been like, this judge feels this way, this judge feels that way, and I can't satisfy everyone. So finding more objectivity.
Yeah, especially when you get to the top level, to the world class groups, it's everybody is so good, and everything's clean. So it's really, it just comes down to personal preference from time to time. And I think trying to steer the activity in a way that you can sort of avoid that and make it a little more objective, I just think that makes it a little more black and white for everybody.
Right. So I'd love to open this question to both of you. Was there anything discussed? Maybe it's not a rule change for this year, or maybe it was a rule change that was knocked down for this year, or I pulled back. I forget the exact word you guys used. But is there anything interesting that maybe didn't make it into this year's rules that you think could be interesting in the future?
Yeah, I can jump in with one of the things that was withdrawn was the process of evaluating if a group is in the correct class or not. Again, with such a new activity like WINS, and every year WINS changes, and what the kids are doing, it's like it's always evolving. And so these new groups coming in that want to get started, a lot of them are like, well, I don't know what class I'm supposed to be in. And they do have a process in place, but the person who brought up the proposal wanted it to more align with what the percussion world does. And I'm sorry, I don't know all the details of all of that. Like, I think right now it's the chief judge and someone else that kind of helps make that decision. And I think percussion might use like a committee to evaluate if people are in the right class. So they talked about that for a long time. And the person who brought the proposal was like, I just want discussion about it. I want people to know that it's, it's an issue, helping people determine. And then mid-season, when you realize they should be bumped up or these people really should be moved down, but like, how does that all work? So we'll see where that goes in the future, but they tabled it just to kind of see what happens next season, I guess.
It's interesting a little because I feel like since they're at different stages in their development from activity to activity, I could imagine a world where it makes sense to have a committee for percussion, but it might make sense to have more of a small, like one chief judge and some team of people that are proposing that an ensemble gets promoted. Maybe it would make sense that they shouldn't have the exact same system right now.
Right.
Or maybe it would make sense that they should.
Right.
It's not on my head to decide, but
yeah, and there was
it's certainly interesting to think about.
A lot of discussion from all different points of view on that one, so it was really interesting.
I think that's good.
Jackie or Justin did, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's good because that gets kind of people thinking and getting ready for next year. Maybe they can spend this season thinking about it and really coming up with some good options, and then next year approach it, with a better situation in mind.
And hearing all those different viewpoints, and then kind of going through this season and then seeing what proposals come out of that next year. Yeah, for sure.
Sure. I've got a question that kind of popped into my head when Matt, you were kind of discussing things and brought up like the local circuits. And this question is actually for both of you. When these committees are meeting, I know it's a WGI thing, but how much discussion, because a lot of the local circuits mirror or try their best to mirror what WGI does to kind of, make everything work cohesively. How much did that factor in those discussions? Like, were the small circuits kind of in the mix in the discussion, or was it kind of more of, we're here for WGI, we're just discussing what to do with our kind of thing?
I can jump in from a percussion standpoint. So there wasn't a ton of discussion about the local circuits specifically, but there was significant discussion brought up on how the rules proposals affect the lower classes, and the A and then the sub A, like the regional A classes. And it's something that the point was brought up a few times, especially discussing like the electronic trigger rules and the minimum performance time rules. Is at the end of the day, these things might change the landscape of world class a little bit, but it's going to make the activity way more accessible for the A class groups, for the regional A class groups, which make up the vast majority of this activity across the country. And so there was a lot of discussion sort of based towards those groups, not as much about the circuits, but I know like our local circuit, we have sort of like a reciprocity with WGI rules that the board can adopt any rules that WGI brings forth. Since our rules Congress is before WGI rules Congress, just whatever they decide, we can adopt those rules automatically into our rule book as well.
Wow. Yeah, there was quite a bit referencing the local circuits in the WINS room, mostly because there were far more groups in the WINS division that competed locally, but did not come to WGI championships for whatever reason or another. So we were talking about the positiveness in that locally they're growing. But then also just making sure that any rules that we pass, because most local circuits take WGI rules, just to make sure that it doesn't impact them negatively. And the one rule that passed about the size of the competition area and aligning it to percussion, I think that rule was directly proposed for local circuits to make sure all local circuits had the same competitive size floor that is expected at WGI. So.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear that, that wasn't a forefront, but it's always thought of that those local circuits aren't being forgotten when we're making these changes. Because you're right, a lot of those lower groups are not coming to WGI, but are still affected by those choices that WGI makes. So that's really awesome to hear that, they were part of the discussion.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because I think I myself, at least, I can only speak for myself, but I get caught up in world class and I don't think about the like lower ensembles, at least outside of whatever high school I'm teaching, really at all, especially when I'm thinking about rules changes. I'm almost only ever thinking about the top scholastic and independent world ensembles and how they're going to be impacted by the most minute little change. Meanwhile, it'll have downstream ramifications for groups that don't even go to WGI. Um,
Well, and that was a really interesting part of the makeup of the percussion advisory board, because it's the top five groups from A class and open class get a seat, and then all of the world class finalists. So the majority of the room is world class finalists, and so it's kind of an interesting thing that the conversation is certainly steered towards how do these things affect the world class groups, but that's why we're there from our A class groups to say, well,
right.
this also affects all these other people too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like my old government class, like a system of checks and balances at the WGI
Right.
Advisory Board.
For sure.
It's like we
Well,
all
I
learned
think we're
that for a
getting to that
reason.
point in our show. It always comes back to bite you, those balances. um, we're getting to that point in the show here. I think we want to get to our gush and goes, which is the part where we let our guests have a minute or so, some time to just gush and go on about whatever you want to relating to your band world. It's your platform to speak about whatever you want. Matt, what would you want to gush and go on about this week?
Oh gosh, I need to think about
On the
this.
spot, hurry, go, go. No, I'm just kidding.
um, I think the biggest emphasis for me from the advisory board was I think that there's a lot of groups in the lower classes that there's more and more accessibility coming to them in this activity, and I think that
Nice.
that is something that is really important, that for unit directors, if you're like have a regional A group or an A group or whatever, um, and you've never gone to a WGI event, like it's way more accessible than it ever has been for you to go and get that feedback and get your students that experience. I can say from my personal standpoint, the first time you take your group to a regional or to WGI championships, it completely changes the game for your students, and because they just this perspective opens up for them of what
Exactly.
they see
Yeah.
what the big fish look like in the big pond, and I think that's a great opportunity for anybody and for any program, and I think it's not just good for your indoor drumline or your indoor winds or your color guard. It helps with your marching band program. It helps with your concert band program. It helps with your jazz program. It just I think that's the best thing anybody can do for their groups is get yourselves exposure on that bigger stage.
Yeah, and that's basically all you're doing at its core is just inspiring your students. You're showing them what they could strive to be and that it's attainable. There's high school students out there doing it, or, just a couple years after, there's some students that are really passionate and just will take it to new heights in the independent side of the activity as well. So I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more.
Well, and
Susie.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. You
No,
can
I was
wrap
just
up.
gonna say, like, the other side of that too, like for students to keep in mind that like those groups that you're just amazed by, like they have the same struggles that you do. It was
Mm-hmm.
well, I think my favorite part of the whole weekend was listening to John Mapes talk about how much the synth players struggle at Pulse with electronic triggers. And I'm like, man, that makes me feel so much better that if
Right.
the Pulse synth players are struggling and ours are, it's like, you know what, guys, you're gonna get it. You'll be okay.
Exactly. No, that's super cool to hear. That's a really humbling thing a little bit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Susie, what do you want to gush and go on about this week?
Well, since we're talking about indoor winds, I just want to gush about indoor winds and just it's such a fantastic activity. And if you have never heard of it or you don't know what it is or you're winds curious, to like get on YouTube and find some shows and check it out. And just it is life changing for these wind players. They have watched their color guard and percussion friends be able to do this activity. And now they have the opportunity to do it. And it's life changing. And one of my favorite things about the wind advisory meetings a couple weeks ago was the camaraderie among all the directors, which absolutely translated to the camaraderie among all the kids. Like our kids, they love performing, they love competing, I guess, but what they look forward to the most is interacting with kids from other schools. And it's just such a great environment. Yeah. And I just hope we kind of, for me personally, for our schools, keep that going into the marching band season as we head into something, back to that really hardcore competitive arena, that it's just the kids love doing this and they love meeting kids from other schools, and just to kind of keep that perspective of what we're providing for our kids. Boy, that kind of tangented off onto something else. I'm sorry, but I was gushing, so that's what happened.
You're gushing. That's how it works.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But no, just to tack onto it, I literally remember being in high school, and that was the coolest thing. It was like, I know those guys up at Old Bridge. That's the other big school around here, and it was like you kind of had beef, but it was also you were kind of really excited to meet them every time that you actually got to cross ways with them.
Yep.
It's a cool experience, and that is actually what it's all about for sure. But yeah, thank you guys for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
So hey Matt, why don't you go ahead and drop your socials? Where can people follow you or see what you're up to? All that fun stuff.
Totally. Yeah. You can follow my group. It's hype.indoor, HIPE.indoor. That's our Instagram handle, Facebook. My personal socials, I post once a year to say happy birthday to my wife. So it's not very interesting, but you can kind of catch all the content of what we're doing throughout the fall and the winter on our Instagram account there.
Very awesome. Cool. How about you, Susie? Where can we find you?
Cool. Well, I'm going to start with I run the TikTok page for Avon Bands, and just because there's a lot of Indoor Winds content on there, if you kind of want to see what's in there, if you follow at the Mighty Avon on TikTok, it's super fun. But personally, my husband and I have a YouTube channel called The Harloff Hub. Harloff is spelled Harloff, and that is hub as in the hub at Walt Disney World. Nothing else. Okay. So we have a lot of content on our YouTube about winds and marching band and all that stuff. So, and a little bit of Carolina Crown sprinkled in there as well. So that's kind of fun. And that's also our Instagram handle, the Harloff Hub. So,
I highly recommend the TikTok. Being from Indiana, I've been following that since it popped up on my For You, and I did not realize you were like now it makes so much sense as I'm watching them. I'm like,
I am old and I run the TikTok page, and it's so fun.
But the content, now knowing that you run it, Susie, I'm like, oh my gosh, everything I've ever watched on there makes all the sense in the world now. You are doing a fantastic job, and I want to give you props, and everyone needs to follow it. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we are going to take full advantage of our guests here. So, Percussion, I'm going to have you guys go with Matt down to the end zone real quick. And anybody who plays a wind instrument and might want to sign up for winds, go see Susie, and then let's get back out on the field. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for coming.
Cool. Thank you, Jackie, Steven, and Justin. Now let's go to the color guard world. I have Christopher McCarthy. Who are you? Christopher McCarthy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So we're going to talk about all the rule change and the interesting stuff that you saw up close. But first, we do a 32 count life story where there's going to be a Dr. Beat and you try to race through your life in 32 counts. Are you ready?
Yes, I'll do the best I can.
Cool. Let's go.
Hi, my name's Chris McCarthy. I grew up in upstate New York, where I did color guard in the Binghamton area growing up, in a guard called Spectrum Winter Guard as well, and the Brigadiers. I am currently the color guard director at McNeil High School in Austin, Texas, where I also am one of the co-directors of Origins World Color Guard, and I'm now one of the co-captions at Shannon Regiment for the color guard.
It's not enough. Do you have a brother, a sister, a mother? Do they matter?
I mean, they all matter. I love my mom and dad. They're still around. They live in upstate New York, and I have 3 siblings, and I have a dog named Charlie who I love and miss dearly.
Oh.
Yeah, and I love coffee.
Oh, don't we
So,
all? So
yeah.
cool. So you're not the one doing the Dunkin' run, are you?
We take turns. A lot of Dunkin' runs, a lot of Starbucks mobile orders. Just on the go all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Try to stay awake.
Yeah. So you were at the, how do you call it? I call it the Vegas and the.
I guess by now when we're like, we'll see in Vegas, we just know that that's where the WGI advisory rating is going to occur out there in Las Vegas.
Yeah. So you were there with Origins, and were you representing Origins World or Open? How does it work now that you have 2 groups represented there?
So I'm a director of Origins along with my friend Jeffrey Sperling. We're actually the co-founders and directors of Origins, the premier color guard that came out in 2018 when we were in our open class. We now have 3 color guards we're going to bring out. We have not announced the A directors yet. They're going to be announced in the near future. But we have the open color guard who's under the direction of Tykeem Rainey and Kim Boer, who actually the open guard is a guard I primarily designed and stage the last few years. And the world guard is under the direction of myself and Jeff. And we've just been doing this now since we started the guard in 2017. At the advisory board meeting this year, Jeff, you only have 1 representative vote. Jeff did the voting this year. We'll probably take turns and switch next year. I was a voting member also with McNeil for a couple of years, so I've been at the table several times. And this year was different because we weren't in the old resort we used to go to. Is a different resort. It used to be kind of a round table discussion type thing, and everyone was kind of facing the same way this time. And it actually was kind of nice because we're all mixed and all had tables and stuff like that.
Okay, so you still voice your opinion, but Jeff was doing the voting.
Oh yeah, yes, Jeff did voting. I mean, we talk about. I mean, there's most of the things through the years when they come out, like we kind of know where we stand on those.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's possible for Jeff and I to differ in our opinions, but I mean everyone in that room should be voting for what's best for the activity as a whole, and not necessarily what's best for yourself or your group.
Yeah, of course. And how do you feel like? Do you feel like everyone took the time to, or were there rules or proposals that took more time, more discussions, or?
Oh yeah, there's like sometimes. So on the way it happens is on Friday night is the first round of meetings start. So at 2:00 in the afternoon, there's actually just a caucus primarily for A and open class. Because if you're not aware, the WGI Advice Board is composed of the top 15 finalists from independent and scholastic world. So there's 30 groups representing, and then it is made up of the top 5 from A and open classes, therefore making about 50 people. So we start with the A and open caucus meeting to talk about any proposals that might pertain to A and open. Because the people in that room kind of know more about what they need or what's going on in that world. And I mean, most world-class people do too, because a lot of people design and teach those other teams too. But then on Friday after that, after we have the A and open caucus meeting, we then vote on what proposals are going to go to the floor. And then I believe this year, I'm pretty sure maybe all but one. I think all of them might have gone to the floor. It was a long weekend and then back to jump course. So, and then we voted on them on Saturday. And so that they sometimes you vote and you talk about them for like 5 minutes. Some talk about an hour.
Oh yeah. All right, cool. So looking at the proposals that failed, or that, what's the right word for when it passes? When it passed. It's thank you. So like it really sometimes we're like half and half. Some of them were really, really close. We can go like in order of which one of the number of proposals, but you can go like, because I know that some of them went like in link of the other or made more sense with the other proposals type of thing. something.
Right. I mean,
Right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's interesting about this year is there's been years where I've been there where there's been 25 proposals, and this year I
Yeah.
think there's about 10.
Mhm.
10. I mean, it was a much shorter year compared to years past, and
Yeah.
we've gone in that room a long night. But I mean, honestly, just going down the list should be fine. I mean, there are some that change to some and not to others, but
Yeah.
those are the rather core. Obviously, it starts from number 1 down to the bottom. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So let's go. So the first proposal was actually a fail, and it was qualification of World Championship to add the group competing independent world and open. So not for the A class must achieve the regional minimum qualification scores. And I'm almost thinking that was something before, or maybe it was not like a low score that you were not allowed to go to championship, but maybe that's like years.
I know, I'm not sure. I think there was, from what I remember in the room, there was a discussion at one time in the years past about that being something. But I know at regionals, it's a thing. I mean, regionals, you have to usually make a certain score to go on to finals, and usually that score's, fairly low. The reason why this failed is, one of the reasons it was primarily brought up was because um, World Champions is just getting harder and harder to get into these days. I mean, I mean, it gets registered, it fills up.
Yeah.
And there's only so many hours in a day and so many judges to judge without passing out by the time you're watching the last color guard. I mean, these judges are doing so much work during the weekend. So they think the spirit was to encourage, to make sure people are coming to championships that really had a fair shot at making the finals, but then couldn't sign up because there might be programs out there that were going to come and maybe not make it, and that would have just taken up time throughout the weekend. So the reason that it did fail, though, is that one of the things we talked about in the room was what is the spirit of activity if we are going to talk about not being able to display the art that you choose to bring and express that. So I don't think we're really ready to take away people's voices. I don't think that was the intent of the at all. But I think we just wanted to make sure the people that wanted to come show us what they create and perform, that all have a fair chance. And not to mention, if you live somewhere in Texas or California, you already have to start paying for hotels and buses and flights like way ahead of time.
A year prior, yeah.
Yeah, you have to do that before the season starts. So it'd be hard to really say you can't come. So.
No. Cool. Then there were proposal number 2, which was amended. So you can explain a little bit more about that. But in the caption, AI equipment, and I think that's, for me, that's the most important role that passed because I'm a judge geek. But eye equipment and eye movement maintained the 7130 factored emphasis and excellence in A class, and expand the factoring percentage in regional A classes, which would be 60 vocabulary and 140 excellence. I like this.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people, I mean, obviously it was a large amount of people that voted yes. And there's just such a long conversation. There's such a large, I don't want to say controversy or drama or anything like that, but there's always been this discussion about A class. So it's like, are people doing too much? Are they doing too little? It is about training. But it really, end of the day, if you really watch closely to, I would say at least the top 10 color guards, yes, there's several color guards in there. They're going to do open class skills or something advanced, but really the class is still about training. And I think that 7130 is so, and if people don't understand what that means that you're weighed more on your achievement than you are in vocabulary. And I think that now that regional A guards are starting to become more and more appeared in WGI because they were only seldom for years, at regionals there's a lot more. That regional A class is a training for the A class. So you're trying to make sure they really have those basic skills down. So you're not trying to see these regional A guards do crazy skills. You want to see them achieve, planes and turning, all that stuff.
And it's
really,
interesting
really
and it's interesting for the designers too, because they have a place to start. And I mean, of course it's about the members and the training, but then you design accordingly. And if you start thinking of designing so much in vocabulary, because often it's members that just left the field and they want to twirl, like it's good for even them to cater to. I really like this. I really think it's a
I think it's a great, yes, absolutely. And the reason it was amended is because it wasn't talking about 6140 for the regional originally, and that was brought up. And that's something we talked about heavily in the Ain't Open Caucus where we voted on it. So
the There was another one about classification. Oh my God, that word is hard for me.
You're doing great. You're doing
But the reclassification review would be done by the color guard education director, the director of color guard, and the color guard judge. These will be independent evaluations without consultation with each other. So I mean, we can go on. If 3 of the 5 instructors vote for reclassification, so basically this means that it's going to be people from independent of the board, or
Yeah, so originally, I mean, I think for a while, if I was actually not even, I learned so much about not like secrets, but I kind of learned more about the inner workings
Yeah.
of like how things kind of work more when Jeffrey Sperling, like co-director, is actually on the steering committee. So yeah, I kind of get a little more insight of like how things are just discussed and worked out without letting me know. I mean, he's very good about not telling me the information that needs. It's a need to know thing when you talking about a lot of stuff. So, but I have learned a lot about kind of like how that process is, and one of the things the steering committee does usually is also reviews, and they watch a lot, and I mean a lot of videos. I know his Monday is primarily booked up of watching all these guards regionals and just talking about it, making decisions. And
yeah, because I think only like 3 years ago they decided for the top 3 of every A class in regionals and then top 2 of it. So it's so many color guards that they review just automatically because of classification.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. And I believe to my knowledge though before that I believe Ron, the CEO, was part of that process. But one of the things that I think he just wanted to make sure that he does not have to be involved in that process, that he's running WGI. You know what I mean? So I know that like having those 3 go through that, and then the other sphere was making sure that those 3 kind of reviewed them first before they went on to the other 5 steering committee members, because that is going to be it's basically means like you basically have to have at least 75% voting before you moved up.
Yeah.
And, every year there's always controversy with like that guard shouldn't have been moved up yet. It's too early and this and that.
Yeah,
And
the early move ups.
I think they really wanted to make sure there was just like a really thorough process to make sure people didn't think that they were just getting bumped up just because.
Yeah.
I know it's a long process and rigorous, and so this kind of is like a really great system, I think, to make sure it's as fair as it can be.
Yeah.
And as thorough as it can be. So
I think it's good too that the groups can have an appeal, but we'll see if any groups. Oh, I guess we won't see because we won't know. But I'm curious to know if there's any groups that will have to go all the way to the appeal. But yeah, the 4. There's about the appeal review committee, and that's the 3 new individuals that.
So actually, yes, I kind of combined 3 and 4 in accident because they were talked about back to back and kind of simultaneously. So yes, that was kind of like part 2 was to make sure that.
And it makes sense that they were done together. So I guess the 4th one just went. The voting must have been quick because they make sense together, right?
Absolutely.
And then there's the video reclassification, which it's kind of the same thing, right? It's depending on weeks, and
there's this I'm so sorry. You read it. I'm like not trying to cut you off. I'm just like
no.
I also I kind of took a quick power nap before this. So I'm like re-energized. It's been a lot of weeks. So go ahead. I'm so sorry. You can go ahead and read and stuff.
Really quick. It says that any unit attending WGI Championship that will only be attending to WGI Regional may submit a video for reclassification review prior to attending the regional. So I think that from what I understood is that for groups that go to really later regionals, if they want to make sure that they're not going to be bumped up so close from WGI, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's another. Yes, no, absolutely. That does make sense. I mean, I think that that's another topic about reclassification that comes up a lot is like when you get bumped in the timeline of the season, and some people just can't make it to an early regional because of either travel restrictions or maybe they're like in the middle of a Midwestern Western state, or they have to travel like 10 hours to get to regional, and it depends on when they land on the calendar. So I think some people are just trying to make sure that they are, that they can get some feedback slash, they can make sure that they can compete in the class they think they belong in. And of course,
Yeah.
they can always come with appeals to that and conversations and stuff. But once again, I think it's just people are trying to do right by their kids and their team by pushing the right place.
Yeah.
Just gives kind of another option.
There's two really quick. I'm going all the way down, but there's two really quick ones, which is just the maximum that can go up to 50 now, which good for people that can have 50 people at their auditions. And then the plugs that can be used for anyone from regional AA, open, and world class because they're there. So that seemed like an obvious choices for you guys. But in the four other, because we are in a time crunch, but for the other ones, is there anything that seemed really, really because some of them were disgusted, obviously, because it was almost half and half of voting. There's anything that stood out to you?
I don't think so. I mean, I think honestly, I think of the name of. I think this is actually kind of an easier year to talk about color guard. It fluctuates year to year in the demands, but obviously, providing power to all the color guards, absolutely. There was a longer discussion about the 40 to 50 rule, but it showed that basically only so many color guards, like I think under 6 color guards, had 40 members in their team anyway. So it's kind of like if you think you can do it safely, go for it. But and besides that, just kind of scrolling through the ones that you had sent me just to refresh my brain. I mean, there's a lot of talk about independent teams kind of getting promoted that have 2 teams and then having to compete against their own team. So that's always going to be an ongoing conversation as the skills get higher. But it was overall a very positive experience and some great conversations happening in the room. So.
Well, that's really cool. So if there's anyone that wants to see all the ones, because we did skip a couple, but they're pretty well explained. You can go on the site of WGI.org and see the proposals. There's also on Facebook where Del Powers did a little overview of the rules and maybe the philosophy that were behind why they passed or why they failed. And yeah, if you're interested behind any of the how WGI works, just go on the website. There's so many information and you can get to know a little bit more of the behind the scenes if you're not as lucky as Christopher to go to Vegas yet. So yeah, so thank you, Christopher. Chris, I hope to see you soon. Wink, wink.
Absolutely. Yes, no, it's been fun. I'm so glad you guys have had me on, and I've listened to several episodes of you guys. I really enjoy the stuff that comes from this podcast.
Thank you. Really nice. Have a great summer.
You too.
Thank you.
So, everyone, what do you guys think of the rules changes this year? Well, Nicole, I think you felt some type of way about one of them. What were your thoughts?
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm just looking at them, but I was looking through and I'm like, okay, because rationale is always my thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason for somebody to do that. But honestly, if the rationale fits the overall, well-being of the organization and everyone in, then yes. However, there is a rule change to go from 40 to 50 performers on the floor.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind. It really does blow my mind because I'm just I think of things like, okay, there are floor sizes, like for a smaller guard, you do like a 50 by 70. And then like you can go higher than that by like, oh, I don't know. But the biggest floor I've ever seen is like the 90 by 120, I think, or 90 by something, 90 by 120. And
what gym is that going to fit in? I mean, unless you're in the UD arena.
I've seen it in a gym, I've seen that size floor in a gym before. Yeah, dangerous. It goes the length of the floor. It goes to the wall.
Most
and then
50 by 70 floors fill the gym.
50 by 70 doesn't fill the gym.
Most high school gyms, yeah.
Oh, okay. Then they shouldn't have a show in a gym. Let me just tell you that. But like at Xavier, I think it was Xavier. Yeah. I saw CGT the year they did the Comet show, and I think that was a 90 by 120. And I was like, oh my gosh, that floor is like literally curled up next to the black curtain in the back.
How much does that weigh?
Hopefully they get the 1 ounce, and not the 13 ounce, because like that's a lot. But I mean, if you can do it, do it. That's my whole thing about it. If you can do it, do it. And I don't know. I guess I'm just excited to see how it's done.
Is that for all classes now? Or just world class?
I think it's all classes.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of them are all classes, because when we were talking to Matt, he was kind of describing how they're usually thinking about like the A schools, even schools that don't go to WGI. They'll be thinking about how the rule changes are going to impact them, not like how the rule changes are going to impact the groups at the top of world class necessarily, even though that's where like all of our heads always kind of want to go.
Right. Yeah, this is, as I'm looking at it, this is for all classes. I'm guessing, and honestly, I'm wondering now, it's just like, okay, well, if this is a rule that passes for WGI, obviously it's a rule that passes for like other circuits.
Yep, that's basically the way it usually goes. Once WGI takes a rule, a lot of the regional circuits will just automatically adopt the rule so that they stay consistent for like the best groups in their region that do go out to WGI finals.
Yeah,
so that would be another reason why, if you have a gym that only fits a 50 by 70 floor, then no.
I can remember performing with United sometimes in South Jersey, and it would just be like all of the corners of the floor are folded on themselves just to fit at the actual show, not like we're just rehearsing somewhere.
You can look back at something like that and laugh, but I have done that before when I was performing, and I was like, I don't want to toss under this basketball hoop, but I have no
Yeah, it's a little harder in color guard. I honestly didn't think about that. There's a
gosh.
percussion rule change that I thought was interesting too.
What do you got, Steven?
You'd no longer have to worry about rhythmic anything. You can have any length sample, any rhythmic intent, as long as it's vocals. If it's words being spoken and nothing else, you can just trigger it and let it go. And you don't have to worry about like, is this going to break the rules because it feels like it's giving tempo to the ensemble.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Okay. Well, yeah, I don't know that that's a plus or a minus.
I think it'll be a plus. I think it'll make it a lot easier for electronics to trigger those samples they're talking about. But if it's easier for them to trigger those samples, they can be doing more other things too.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it does free up some space for performers to do other things now.
Yeah, and I totally expect people to be like litigious, like they're gonna be lawyers about like figuring out how they can apply that rule as like broadly as possible. And
absolutely.
I think it'll exactly. But someone's gonna find a cool loophole, and it's gonna make for a really cool show. I think that the shows will be cooler for that change, so I like it.
It'll maybe hopefully piggyback on what we were talking about like way back when we were interviewing someone for the podcast about having an AI generated show.
Yeah, exactly. You could click play on your narration at the start of your show and not touch it again theoretically until the end. You would just have to play perfectly in time.
Yeah, watch. Someone is gonna do it.
You can already do that in at least our fall band circuit.
Okay.
And being a small band, we always take advantage of that.
Well, that was why they made the change, was they felt like it would make the activity a lot more accessible for the smaller groups.
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that.
I agree. Well, we've got a lot more good WGI stuff to talk about. Why don't we go? We're going to get the guard stretched out over there, and we'll get ready because Carol Abohatab is here, and she's got something to say.
Hello, everyone. It's Tim Hinton, the beast of the Marching Arts and the host of the Marching Roundtable podcast. It's a great summer, and we're in the middle of a series of podcasts about the 2023 DCI season. These podcasts are being released in audio and video versions, which you can find at our website. Already available are podcasts about the Cavaliers, who are celebrating 75 years with Where You'll Find Me, and the Madison Scouts, who share great advice about building a better culture in your organization. Out this week is our conversation with Carolina Crown, where I talk with 4 members of the design staff. Now listen to this: Rick Subel, the artistic director, Jeff Saktig, the visual designer, Michael Klesch, brass arranger and music director, and Kevin Shaw, percussion arranger and sound designer. They were so nice to stop in the middle of spring training when we recorded that and talk to me about the show. We take you behind the scenes. You hear about how the show was constructed and then about how the members are bringing the show ideas to life this summer. This show is epic, as any show about Camelot would have to be. And then next week, I talk with music coordinator Mark Whitlock of the Cadets. We talk about their show, Atlas Rising, and the strength and grit required by the Corps. I think you will be fascinated about how Mark describes the show, saying it's analogous to the past, present, and future of the Corps. The grit and strength required of Atlas Rising in relation to the past, present, and future of the Cadets. This is pretty gritty stuff. Watch for other podcasts all summer from other DCI Corps, where we take you behind the scenes and up close, including a conversation I recently had with Phantom Regiment visual designer Stephen Estudillo about their show Exogenesis, which everybody is already talking about. It's a great summer of drum corps. And don't forget that you really need to see drum corps live. Go buy a ticket, sit in a stadium, make an effort to get there, because the live experience is really special. You can feel the energy and passion of the performers coming off the field. It's an experience unlike anything else. Go see drum corps live. Happy DCI, everybody. Hope you enjoy our interviews all summer at the Marching Roundtable.
Okay, we are back on the sidelines. Everybody, make sure you got your water bottles and sit over here. There's some space on this side. We are talking today to Carol Abohatab, who is a 2023 WGI Hall of Fame inductee, and I am so excited. Hi, Carol.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Carol.
Hi.
And we have Justin back with us today as well to do our interview. Hi, Justin. I've missed you.
Oh, I've missed you guys too. It's great to be back.
But Carol, the very first way we always start out our interviews is what we call your life story in 32 counts. You'll have about 30 seconds while the Met goes behind you to catch all of us up to speed on who you are and what you've been up to your entire life. Are you ready to give it a go?
I will give it the good old college try.
You'll get 8 and in from the Met.
Okay, so let's see, started drum corps when I was about 8.5 years old, when my sister was in a drum corps in our local town in Enfield. I was in the feeder corps, and from there I went to 27th Lancers and went to Winter Guards in the Northeast, and then migrated to Midwest and West Coast, where I now reside.
Oh, wow. And have you been teaching out in the West Coast as well since then?
Well, yes, I actually thought I was going to stop teaching drum corps. So I marched in the Lancers after my little hometown. And Jackie, you were saying you were from a little town. I am too, Enfield, Connecticut, which nobody has ever heard of.
I have not heard of it.
There were 2 drum corps there with 2 feeder corps, so it was something to do,
Wow.
for all of us just hanging out on the street corners. and from there I auditioned for the Lancers rifle line, and I was there for 6 years. And then my last year I actually went to Star of Indiana, and aged out of Star.
Yeah, Star of Indiana.
Yeah, their first year.
Yes, my high school band director was in Star of Indiana too, so yes.
Oh, wow, great. Yeah, so I was age out there, which was their first year in 1985. And then I stayed there for quite a long time, I did my undergrad and at UW-Madison, and I was in the State Street Review, Winter Guard, and I taught there for many, many years until there last year. And then I was teaching the Glassman 93 through 95. And in 96, I decided to go to grad school at Mills College right here in Oakland. And so I moved to the West Coast, said I wasn't going to teach anymore. And Shirley Doherty called me up and said, I heard you're out here. Why don't you come teach the Vanguard?
That's the way that drum corps always goes, isn't it? Once you try to step out, they pull you right back in every single time.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer. I was hook, line, and sinker since '96, pretty much. I mean, I've been with that organization on and off till about 2018. So yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's incredible. I'm young and very recently aged out of the activity, so you've spent close to my entire lifetime with Vanguard.
I was gonna say, since Steven was born, you've been there.
Oh my gosh, you all are youngins. Yeah, yeah. It was a long time and many incarnations of teaching different aspects. At one point, I started a children's dance program there, and the Winter Guard for all 11 years, and yeah. So I am with the Bluecoats now. I've been there since 2013, but I went back
Oh my.
to I did simultaneous, kind of things for a couple of years in there, and yeah, and I just started. I just went back to Spirit for the first time. Actually, my first drum corps teaching gig was Spirit of Atlanta in 1987. Scott paid me out of his fee, and I went with Scott and Sal Salas, Scott Chandler and Sal Salas, and they gave me my first chance to teach. So, gosh, 35, 6 years later, that's older than everybody on here, maybe.
Wow.
I just went back there just last week.
So you've been with so many ensembles. How would you say your approach to teaching uh, is it influenced by each group? Is there kind of one rock from early on in your career that sort of shows up over and over again? How does all this big sphere of influence blend into who you are as a teacher?
That's interesting because I grew up with drum corps in the days when it was, pretty hardcore. I mean, there wasn't there weren't water breaks, every 15 minutes, and I think that's a great thing, and we need that. But it was kind of this. I don't want to say like the survival of the fittest, but it was just a different time, and there wasn't. Certainly there weren't all of the resources available to us. And
Right.
so, I was a George Zingali, Peggy Twiggs, Denise Bonfiglio person. I was taught by them at a very, very young age. I grew up with them. And so Denise is still, one of my best friends. And I guess I took with me, because when I first started teaching, actually at Vanguard, when my friend Mark Metzger and I took over as the caption heads when Shirley and Mike Turner left, we had Denise come in and help us. And, she would say to me, stop yelling at them. And I thought, wait, isn't that how it goes? And so, definitely there's been a learning curve. Also, when I went and studied dance, for
that was going to be my next topic. I want to jump on.
Yeah. Oh, okay. If you want to go there, but that was part of.
No, you go right ahead, because I think you're probably going where I want to go.
Yeah. So when I started studying dance seriously, because it was important to me to not just to do moves, with the equipment, but to learn it correctly, first of all, teach it correctly, and then have it become integrated, like a marriage between the equipment and the movement, so that the body. My whole thing was always that you can't just make the equipment move without your body. So your body is an integral and important part of it. And so I really, in Madison, I became a dance major and went on to grad school. So I found that I taught differently after learning all of those principles of movement of the body and just the kinesthetic awareness, the movement kinetics, everything about it just really interested me, so that it became part and parcel to the equipment as opposed to the other way around.
So I just have to say, you were literally my inspiration on that, because understanding that, like, I could take dance classes and then come back and relate that to what I'm doing in color guard and understand color guard better, just having that understanding, that level is so fantastic. And I saw instructors like yourself when I was in college. I saw you had gone through and you had the degree in dance and you had the master's degree in dance, and you had taken the time to step back to learn all of these things from the ground up. And that, personally, I went through and did the same thing when I was in college. I don't have a master's, I don't have any degrees in dance or anything, but just the fact that I felt like I can go back and take, an entry-level ballet course as a college student and learn all of these things, and then do some jazz and and just build on that and use that for my color guard education too. So that was going to be my question, was how did you decide to go that direction from color guard? So you've basically answered me already.
It was also moving from, because I was also in winter color guard on the East Coast in Quasar and Erte, and we moved, but it was different. It was a little bit different, and that's where I met Sadie, actually, and she was a dancer, so she was kind of the first spark of, wow, this could be different. And then when I went to State Street, they were dancing. They were doing dance class. The warm up and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And then I rented a chorus line, and, after that, I was right in. Yeah.
That's awesome. You said that we've been talking a lot about drum corps, but you've got big time involvement in WGI. You're being inducted to the WGI Hall of Fame. What was more of your involvement on the WGI side of things across your career?
Well, it started pretty early as well, because when I was about 12 years old, the little drum corps that I was in, Skip Gallant, who was actually a friend of Mickey Kelly's, had a color guard about an hour and change away. And at that point in time, we would drive there weekly for rehearsals on school nights. And my parents loved it. They saw how much I loved it. And, so I was in winter guard from an early age. And then from the Lancers, I didn't march that many places. I mean, I performed with that guard and then Quasar and Erte and State Street, my age out year, when there was still an age out for world class. And at the time it was open was the highest, right? And then I went on to teach. So winter guard, just was, and I can't even name, even if I wanted to, I couldn't name everywhere that I taught, because there were a lot of places, high schools and things like that. But once, the Raiders, Emerald Marquis, when Denise came to the Lancers, she then asked me to come to Emerald Marquis, and Jim Moore was writing there and choreographing, and I did a lot of their technique. Jim did as well, but they wanted, just that balance of ballet and modern for their technical training. So I would do what Dale Powers called the voodoo warm up. a lot of improvisation, and he'd be like, "Oh, there goes Carol doing her thing." It was that was really great working, and that's where I met John. Jim I had known because he was in Spirit of Atlanta back then, and also State Street in '89, and so that was a great experience with Emerald. And then I came back to California and worked with the Raiders, San Jose Raiders, from 2002 to 2005, and then Vanguard Winter Guard started, and that was it.
Right.
I did some high schools, but Vanguard Winter Guard was 7 minutes from my house, and my heart was there.
Well, Carol, it's like listening to your journey is so amazing. You've touched on so many iconic groups throughout your like whole career. You've State Street, Emerald Marquis, Raiders. I mean, every time you mention someone new you've worked with, I'm like, wow, she's really been like on the whole journey of the development of our whole thing and what we do. So I'm curious, since you've been able to kind of watch everything change and how this activity has grown, and the different depths and the different directions we've gone creatively and all of that, what are your thoughts on the future? Like, where do you see this going? And like, what kind of ideas do you have that you're hoping to kind of bring with the groups that you're working with?
Well, you know what really thrills me, I will say, is that movement. And it's not me. I mean, Scott and Stanley and many others, Shirley and Stacy Lynn. There's so many people that started this whole movement or dance movement, as it were.
Sure.
And so I just, as the years went on and we would encourage people to study and to get education so that they were more informed with their bodies, I would be hell bent not to throw a rock and hit someone who's studied, even in drum corps. And, the musicians now are so into it. There's no place I go that they don't expect to move, that they don't expect to dance. And, Samia Mooney Vanderkolk, she goes by Vanderkolk now. She's taken this and she's, run with it, as has Katie Hopkins, and, people all over and their students. So, I was a student of Scott and Stanley to some aspect, because I would, be at conventions where he was at and things, and then students that I've had, and, others have had, that Casey Perkins. God, I used to watch the Blue Knights warming up across the way in the mid '90s with the late '90s with the Vanguard, and I would be like, "What's she doing over there?"
I know that. I've done that several
Robbie
times
Billings.
myself.
What's that?
Oh, I said I know that feeling. I've done that several times myself. I'll be warming up a group and I'll just look over to my side and be like, "Oh wait, what are they doing?" And
Yep.
completely forget what I'm doing with my groups. So I totally get that.
Yeah, Casey and Robbie Billings. Robbie Billings was one of the first drum corps, kind of what we call, I don't like this term, so I'm not going to use it, but the musicians moving as well. Robbie Billings, man, with the Blue Knights,
Yeah.
So there's many others, but it's really cool. So my whole thing about where it's going is that I hope to see invention still happening, and I know it is. And I think dance and studying the body just adds layers to that allows people to do things that they didn't think they could do before without getting injured. And then, I mean, there's also this tie-in with, history and the old, and how can we elevate what was done in, the creation of drum corps and the shows and how they evolved and everything. How can we take those older aspects and make them new again? And
I would say that's my favorite thing that's happening right now, is the reflecting back on the past and how we can innovate it to look like yeah, I'm in love with all the creators out there who are, for however long, even if it's just like a 5-bar thing, it's this old school drill or the old school moving, and then they merge it together with today. I am in love with that, and I too hope to see more of that. I think it's a really cool thing.
It's awesome, and it might bring some of the, it might bridge the gap between the traditional, kind of mindset, people who wanted to go back to where it was, and people who don't want it to be anything like that. So I'm hoping for that merge all around.
I think I could see that coming, because I think even as a young person, a lot of us, there's certain aspects of the activity before we were involved in it that we look back on, we're just like, wow, that's just so impressive and just so cool.
And they
So
were the things that
none of us, at
inspired
least,
us.
exactly. So
Sure.
it's not wanting to get rid of the new. It's just ready to look back and just mesh with all the best things that uh, have been traditionally always a part of the activity as well. Um, we always wrap up these episodes by just doing something we call a gush and go. This is like about 30 seconds, a minute or so, that you can just go on about whatever you want. It's your platform just to maybe talk about your ensemble or whatever really you would want to tell our audience. So, Carol, what would you want to gush and go on about this week?
I think I'm going to gush about all the people we get to meet, how the activity makes the world smaller and also more connected. I think it's so cool that instructors and students I've had stay in touch and have even become colleagues. And I feel like everywhere I go, it's about 2 or 3 degrees of separation. Current students who have been taught by one of my students or by a colleague. We're just so fortunate to be connected in this way.
Well, it's been great having you on, Carol. We absolutely love getting the chance to interview people like you that just have such storied histories in our activity. So, thank you for coming on our show. Is there a place, social media or something like that, where our listeners could follow you or see the things you're involved with?
Oh, well, I do have a website that I haven't visited in quite a while, but it's openspacesdance.com. And I have my yoga. Over COVID, I became yoga certified, and so I do have some information there. And yeah, otherwise Facebook is my name. So yeah, and I think I'm Open Spaces Dance on Instagram. So yeah.
I'm going to go follow you right now.
Oh, I'm going to follow all of you.
We are sitting here.
So I remember the names, but no, thank you so much. I am humbled and grateful for the opportunity to, to chat with you all and to meet you.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for
it's
coming.
been great
It's great.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, it's Ashlee here. If you haven't heard already, we have a new podcast called On a Water Break in Rhinestones, where Lexi Duda, an icon of modern baton twirling, is asking twirlers from all around about their experiences. Check out the newest episode where Lexi is on a water break with Stephanie McBurnett, a featured twirler at Texas Christian University. Stephanie tells us all about what it's like to twirl at TCU, including going to the national championship game this past season. This episode is already out, so head on over to listen on a water break.
Man, talking to Carol was so cool. I love that we get to have guests on this show that are so experienced, but when they just talk about what they've done in their marching career, they're just like rattling off these incredible ensembles like the Blue Devils, Vanguard, Cadets, and all these incredible names too. It's such an honor to get to talk to some of these people that we get to bring in.
Right?
But
and Carol's just, I think like Carol in color guard.
Right.
I mean, that's one
Hand
of,
to
as
hand.
soon as I see her name or hear her name, I'm like, it's gonna have something to do with an amazing color guard. I know it.
And
she's a legend. She's an absolute legend.
Yeah, she absolutely is, and she's so down to earth too. She was so just really chill to talk to. She runs a yoga studio. She's awesome. Really loved getting to talk to Carol. And for all you listening out there, be on the lookout. Now that DCI shows are starting, both myself and all the hosts, I know Thom in particular, we're real excited to watch these shows. We're going to put out a special episode just reacting to what we see out there and really trying to digest all that content with you guys. But we'll be doing some more good DCI stuff coming soon. Thom, what do you think about it?
We're gonna have some fanboy stuff happening this summer, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna be fanboying.
We're gonna get our freak on. We're gonna talk. We're gonna be excited. We're gonna be fans. We're not gonna be judgmental. We're gonna be fans, super fans, man.
Yeah, we're like the kids today. They're stans.
A stan? I think this is the first time in my life I'll say it. I think I'm a Blue Devils stan right now. And being raised on the East Coast, that's not right.
Heavy words.
Heavy words.
Heavy
But
words.
that's where my head's at today. We'll see where my head's at next week.
It changes. If you are for real stan, it's like, oh, I love them. Maybe not next week, I don't, but
I'm standing for real. Anyway, though, our hosts, we're coming in with some great news stories to both inform and entertain you all this week. Nicole, what do you got?
All right. So my news story is that Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas Time parade, they're actually holding auditions for the Toy Soldier Marching Band. So that's coming back. If you go on their website, there's a whole like you can literally Google Disney marching band toy soldiers, but they have information for if you are local and how you'll do that. However, it's a online submission for student musicians, so it's for Walt Disney World. The audition city is Kissimmee.
That's really close to Orlando.
Okay, so that's the audition city. It's going to be, or the deadline is Friday, July 14th at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this audition, they're only seeking performers participating in the Disney College program. So this cross-U opportunity is available to domestic college program participants currently in a program, regular or extension, or arriving on a program later than August 25th, 2023. So they're not going to be accepting any performers interested in full-time, part-time, or seasonal work at this audition. So they're kind of getting you to get in to the Disney College program at the same time, which I've heard from a lot of people isn't a bad thing. I mean, I know of a lot of people. Honestly, this is a great thing for like drum corps, indoor percussion, color guard, hornline people. Like it is right up our alley.
Take advantage of much stuff as you can, because the older you get, the less opportunities.
True. So the Disney parks, they're seeking marching, trumpet, and percussion players for the traditional toy soldier for Mickey Once Upon a Christmas Time parade, and that's going to be performed at the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando, Florida. So get your auditions in, folks.
Yeah, super cool. Go take the chance to apply your skills, do something fun, and I would imagine get paid. But
get
Thom,
your money.
Get that money. Thom, what do you got this week?
Well, it's drum corps. It's more drum corps. And my favorite thing, other than going to a show, is watching it live.
Oh, yeah.
At home on the couch, eating popcorn, not swatting mosquitoes and whatnot.
That's live in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? nothing compares to being there. But if you can watch it live on something cool like Flow Marching, that's pretty good. It's $30. You get a ton of shows. They're doing like 10, 12 shows this year, championships. You know, in the past, people have had a lot to say about Flow, but where else can you do it? You know, you can't get to a show.
And
support
here's
it.
what I think too: $30. I pay more than $30 for a ticket to one show.
To one
You
show
get the
and the
whole summer.
gas and the hot dog.
Oh God! Don't even get me started.
Yeah. So and it kicks off Thursday. This Thursday. 2 days. Drum corps starts.
They aren't even sponsoring us yet.
Oh, they should be.
They should be.
We should be doing their shows.
Get Flow Marching. Flow Marching sponsor us. I'll be watching.
I'll be watching. I'm excited. I love it. It's drum corps. How can you not?
Me too, man. I'm so happy it's finally coming around. It's like I'm a kid in a candy shop for the next 2 months.
Exactly.
And I'm even more excited this year because in the past 10, 20 years, no one's really done in June with their shows.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking full-on productions coming out Thursday night.
Yeah. And the bar's already high. Everything I've been seeing, I'm like, man, these shows are good. And like, I'm not just saying that. I really do think it's a good year.
It is. There's a lot of creative shows this year.
For sure, man. Let me hit you guys with my news story. This one's pretty cool. The drum corps division of the St. Mary High School Cadets, which is a school in Jamaica, they got a humongous boost recently through a GoFundMe campaign where a group of past cadets from the school presented their alma mater with instruments valued over $1 million.
Wow!
Yes, over $1 million worth of instruments. They set out to raise approximately $7,677, according to the article. But the GoFundMe campaign brought home more than $1.1 million.
That's awesome.
Yep, they're really set now. We've got a little list. It's not a little list; it's a long list of the things that they bought.
That tells you right now, like, music is so important in the schools. I don't see math programs going out fundraising and people going way over the top.
Yeah, 82.
Yeah, we don't have any seven-figure calculus contracts for sure. But it's awesome. It says here they items were sourced overseas. It includes a ceremonial mace with the school's name inscribed, because I suppose that's the type of stuff you buy when you get more than $1 million extra than you asked for.
Jewel encrusted.
Yeah, probably. It better be. 2 mace cords, 2 bass drums with carriers, 5 pairs of mallets, a bass drum sling, 6 tenors, 16 tenor mallets, 12 slings, only 4 snares. I guess they must really prefer the tenors.
I love that.
And this is coming from a bass drummer. He just like only 4 snares.
Yeah, you don't need that many.
One's enough. That's all you need.
2 cymbals, 3 G bugles, 14 bugle slings, 5 B flat flutes, white gauntlets, 150 marching band gloves, 9 drum keys, and 6 cleaning kits.
I couldn't give them 9 drum keys. I've got about 100 in my apartment.
Wow. Yeah. Who's going for their, who's doing their uniforms?
I wish I could tell you. It seems like they may have overlooked that and spent $1.1 million on equipment.
Oops.
That's all right.
Oops.
That's the next fundraiser.
Well, all right. Yeah. Well, come on, Fred J. Miller. Somebody, let's help these kids out with some uniforms, man.
Yeah, it's only right. I think that if you're gonna walk around with 7 figures worth of equipment, you got to look good doing it. So
right? Yeah, you got to look good doing it too.
I just think that it's funny that we just laughed about the 4 snares, but it was just like we didn't bat an eyelash at the 6 tenors.
That's what I think is so funny about it. 6 tenors, but only 4 snares.
Well, it's a single tenor, right? So it's like a snare drum, but without guts. Most likely.
No. Maybe it could be something like that. Maybe some tri-tom.
Yeah, these are a lot of parade bands usually, so
got it.
They play a lot of traditional marches.
Right. That got that vibe reading the article. It's like a real prideful like community drum corps in the school type of program.
Cool, man. That's so awesome. Good for those guys.
It is so cool. Good for them. I'm sure they're going to enjoy it. But let's thank you all for a great rehearsal this week. Thank you to our hosts, Nicole, Thom, Justin, Cynthia, and Jackie as well. Thank you to our guests, Chris McCarthy from Origins, Susie Harloff from Avon, and Matt Carraher from Hempfield High School, and of course, the amazing Carol Abohatab. Go subscribe, write us a review, and share it with a friend. You can follow us on social media at On a Water Break, and we will see you at the next rehearsal on a water break.
Go practice.